This is Taking Stock on Bloomberg. I'm Pimm Fox. Now, July was a disappointing month for U.S. automobile sales. Sales at Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler, they all failed to meet expectations. Jessica Caldwell is Director of Pricing and Industry Analysis at Edmunds.com, and she joins us now from Santa Monica. Jessica, welcome to Bloomberg.
Hi, thank you.
So what about the sales report from the big three? Were there any surprises there? You and I were talking during the break about how if you take a look at just GM's numbers, the company says that they included the Saturn division, Hummer, as well as the Pontiac group, but that those aren't the brands they're keeping. The four brands they're keeping, they apparently rose 25%. Are we missing something?
Right, there is some confusion there because they are saying both ways. They're saying look at GM as a whole with all of the brands versus the four core brands. But what we know is GM going forward is going to focus on those four core brands. And when you do that comparison year over year to last July, I mean, there was a lot of turmoil at GM. So it's really no surprise why they're showing such a big percentage jump when you look at it year over year. I mean, those were their strongest brands. They had to get rid of the other ones for a reason. And moving forward, we should see some favorable comparisons using those four core brands.
What is the biggest thing in your mind holding back automobile sales? Is it new models or the lack of credit, or people have just been trained to wait for new deals?
Well, I think it's just the consumer confidence issue. People have just been so hesitant in terms of buying a new car, and for obvious reasons. I mean, there's not a lot of difference in people's bottom line, and there's not really a lot to be optimistic for going forward, especially in the short term. So until there is a swing in people's income and people's sentiment about the economy, I think they're still going to continue to suffer despite what the automakers try to entice customers with.
Jessica, do you get the impression that we exist with two separate economies? Because the reports from Mercedes and BMW, they were very optimistic, and indeed they were setting records in some cases.
Yeah, the luxury definitely a surprise today. Mercedes is doing well. Even Acura division, which is a lesser-known luxury brand, doing very well. So it does seem like there is a bit of a difference. But when you look at total market share for luxury, it doesn't look like it's really fluctuated much in the past few months. And a lot has to do with incentives. Mercedes-Benz was very aggressive this month in terms of incentives. And, looking back a year ago, they weren't as, as prominent, especially since we're going into that cash for clunker season in which the luxury makers really didn't benefit from.
Jessica, what kinds of automobiles do Americans really want? Have you seen any changes in their appetite, for example, for SUVs?
Not so much SUVs. We've seen a resurgence of the midsize sedan. It seems like there is a return to basics. People just saying, I don't need all those fancy crossover SUVs. Let me just have four doors, something that gets decent gas mileage. So we've seen that segment do really well. Large trucks did really well this month too. I mean, there were some new truck entries, so that definitely helps. But I think there was some pent-up demand over the past few years in that segment, which allowed them to have a good month as well. So it seems to be, at least this month, a return to basics.
One of the issues that Ford reported is that many consumers are looking to buy much more expensive option packages. They want all the electronics, and they want things like leather seats. Is that a trend?
Yeah, and that's something that the automakers are really banking on moving forward as more of the overall market goes to smaller cars and crossovers, not things built on big truck platforms. Automakers need to make up the profitability in some way. So turning to gadgets and gizmos and electronics, that's how they're going to make up that profit margin and make more money in the future. So they're really banking on that and hoping that that trend is going to continue.
What about the prospects for Chrysler's turnaround? They've introduced a new Jeep vehicle, and also they're planning to introduce the Cinquecento, the Fiat automobile. How do you think that's going to play in the United States?
They still have a long way to go. Of course, they introduced the new Jeep Grand Cherokee, which is one of their big traditional sellers, but they still need a lot more. They're selling under three brands. They're selling Chrysler, Jeep, and Dodge. So having two new vehicles to talk about over the course of a year isn't really a lot. So we need to see a lot more from them before we can really begin to see a turnaround. I mean, they've really depended a lot on fleet this past year, and that's not going to last forever. So let's see what they got. We need to see some more new product.
Jessica, talking about new products, what about the introduction of the Chevy Volt coming in at about $41,000? Does that look like a winner to you?
It is pretty expensive, but I think there's a lot of people out there that like the latest and greatest and like to be the first on the block to have a new toy. So I think it will do well in that regard. That said, there's definitely a lot of other competitors that are coming out and trying to come out with new products as well. So the light might not shine as brightly on the Volt for as long period as Chevy hopes for. But that said, they have relatively low volume targets, so I think they'll do well. But in terms of long-term prospects, I think that that could be challenging. So past year one and past two, past the honeymoon phase.
What about the popularity of hybrid vehicles? We noted, for example, that Toyota might be making the Prius in the United States.
Yeah, hybrid vehicles continue to do well. Maybe not as hot as they did a few years ago when gas was super expensive, but there's something that's not going to go away. So I think all automakers are still trying to figure out what are the latest and greatest and how do they stay on top of that segment and really become the next big seller like the Prius. So, Toyota has good competition from other automakers, so they're going to continue to struggle. But I don't think hybrid and that whole green idea is going to go away anytime soon. It's going to grow.
Jessica, what about the market for used automobiles? Does that continue to be strong?
It really does. We see a lot of demand on the used side. Obviously, when times are tough and people need a new car, they don't want to spend a lot of money, so they think used is really the option. So what we're seeing is because of all that demand, prices are increasing, and prices have been very strong, which is interesting because when you look at new cars, there's been such generous incentives, low APR offers, that when some smart consumers do the math, they may come out better buying a new than a used. So people really have to be cautious. But yeah, in terms of a downturn, used is always going to be really strong. But be careful of that pricing.
All right. I want to thank you very much, Jessica Caldwell, coming to us from Edmunds.com.